spooky soulmates. So we're going to have a change of pace today.
Hello.
We just got done filming what I thought was going to be like a really light episode. And it got dark fast.
It got worse.
Yeah, it got worse. So Rachel is exhausted. So I'm taking over for a second here to kind of give her a breather. This episode is actually talking about haunted hometowns. And I'm really, really excited about it because, well, Rachel has a way better story than I did because I didn't experience anything haunting until I was like 13 or 14 years old. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I'm really interested to hear her story.
Just promise me that we'll be friends afterwards.
You made me promise that with the dolls episode.
No, it wasn't for that one. It's for this one.
Oh, it's for this one? Well, now I'm super intrigued. Oh my gosh.
All right, friends. You've heard it. Everything will be fine. Kaila said it. And our friendship will be intact no matter what.
I don't understand how this affects our friendship.
Oh, you'll find out.
Okay.
All right. But
all right. So anyway, real quick before we dive in, I want to remind you guys where you can find us. The Good Luck Sleeping podcast on Facebook is kind of the hub for everything that we do. So I would recommend joining us on Facebook. On Instagram is Good Luck Sleeping Podcast. Mm-hmm. On Twitter, it is GL Sleeping. And then if you have a crazy story that you want to share that we'll probably share in an episode, send it. It's just good, right?
Yep. Good Luck Sleeping Podcast at gmail.com.
There's so many.
We have a lot. You know, we tried to like make them all uniform and use the same handle for everything.
But Twitter hates me.
Yeah. And it's long. Okay. The podcast name is long.
Yeah, it is.
And so, yeah.
But it's so cute and catchy, and like we've got people that love it. So
yeah, and our cute little guy. I think we've shouted out Steve McCorkle before. I like your name, Steve McCorkle. He did our artwork for us, and we're in love with our cute little girl that is having trouble sleeping. Kayla's going to start us off here. First off, how was your week, Kaila?
Well, actually, I found out it's not twins.
Yes.
I forgot to tell you all this. It's not twins. It is, in fact, a little boy. Yes. And I'm super excited. His name is Oliver Reese. And he's just burrowed down in there, which is why it felt like twins. So I was wrong, but at least I'm having a baby. Confirmed.
Yay, we're very excited. Another little boy, and I've got two boys too, and it's fun to do to buy all the boy mom merchandise. Yeah. You know, like I'm 100% on board with that. So we'll have to get you a shirt.
I know, I'm gonna have to embrace it. Yeah. Rachel was so sweet. She came out of her little introvert bubble to come to my gigantic gender reveal party, and like she walked in and she goes, "What can I cook?" She wanted to just get away from the people. So I put her in the kitchen and she was more comfortable.
I only knew Kaila and her husband, Dick Pirate there. So
sorry, Joe, you will never be Joe again.
But it's a gender reveal party, and Kayla's got to be the hostess and stuff. So I was like, I need to do something to distract me. So I cooked up taco meat.
And she did a very good job. So
thanks. It was fun.
And then as soon as we busted the piñata, she was like, okay, bye.
There's not many people that I would go to a party for that I didn't know anybody. But Kaila is on that very short list. So,
and this actually was what was so hilarious to me. After you did that, I think I've talked about how like I attract the anxious introverts as friends. And there were two of those at the party besides you. Oh. And literally, as soon as you left, they dropped like flies. They were like, okay, bye.
Oh, man. We should have joined made a little club.
I know. Yeah. They were literally walked out as soon as you left. So I was like, well, that's not right on time.
Yeah. I had a grateful day, and I made sure to let everybody in my life that I'm grateful for. If you didn't get a note, it's because I not because I'm not grateful for you, but it's because maybe I only did part of that list. But I let Kaila know how grateful I am for her and for all that she does for just me as a friend and for our podcast and all that. But
she was so sweet. She paid me back for the book and took me out to dinner. It was adorable.
It was super cute. We had a good time. Yeah. So, yeah. I, this past week, did something that I am so proud of.
What'd you do?
I made the ultimate 90s, early 2000s playlist.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. I came around in the middle of that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I have a vast, I think, taste in music. I like a lot of different things. I like a lot of folk music. But if I want to sing along, it's 90s, 100% of the time. And here, just take a gander. I entitled it, Take Me Back Temporarily.
Take Me Back Temporarily.
It's good stuff, man.
I don't know any of these. Oh, I know Sixpence None the Richer.
I knew you would know that one. I knew it.
Okay, to be fair, I was born in 1990, so
yeah.
I mean, I was only 10 by the end of the decade, and I have mentioned how I was super sheltered. I was only allowed to listen to Christian bands until I was like 18 years old. So I've been doing some catching up. Clearly, I need to do more.
I'll post the playlist in case any of the
Foo Fighters,
the other 90s fans
Dave
out
Matthews.
There. Yeah.
There's no NSYNC.
Oh,
what the heck, Rachel?
Sorry, I didn't like boy bands. No, not a fan.
Backstreet Boys? Britney Spears? It's Britney, bitch.
No. So anyway, I'll post that. But yeah, I had a pretty low key week, and that was the highlight.
And that's why we started a podcast.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to dive right in.
Go for it.
So Rachel was like, "Oh yes, I know exactly what I'm doing," and I was like,
"It's exactly how I talk."
Crap. So I went back to my actual hometown. I was born in Kentucky, and conveniently, right next to where I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, I didn't grow up in Louisville, but it's close, is Waverly Hills Sanatorium. And I had heard about this through my friend. He wanted to get everybody, a group of 10 people, to go in and do the overnight paranormal investigation, which, if you didn't know that, they let you do that. You can pay $100 per person and stay for 8 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you want to sleep there after your investigation's done, you can sleep next to the body chute. Jeez. I was like, that's a no for me.
Jerk.
But basically, it's this big place that it evolved over the years into different things. And now it's owned by the Mattinglys? Okay. Mattinglys.
Okay.
And their goal right now is to restore it to its former glory and turn it into a hotel.
Sure.
I'm like, I don't think that's the best idea, but sure, whatever.
Yeah.
You do you. I'm never staying there. Okay, so I'm going to give you some history on the Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
I would love it.
Waverly Hills was originally started as a small school by Major Thomas H. Hayes in 1883. He only had 2 daughters, so I don't know if he brought in the kids in the neighborhood in Jefferson County for this, but he hired a school teacher, and she kind of lovingly dubbed it Waverly Hills. So he went with it. In 1908, it underwent some construction to become a quarantine home for tuberculosis patients.
Okay.
In 1910, it opened and was made to house about 40 to 50 tuberculosis patients.
Okay.
At the time, tuberculosis was a death sentence. They had not come up with a vaccination yet, and they wouldn't for 50 more years. So that's a lot of death.
Sure. Oh my gosh, yeah.
The treatment was rest, fresh air, sunshine, and good food.
So basically, it's a death sentence. 100%,
yeah, make their life as comfortable as possible, basically.
Hospice care.
Yeah. It became an epidemic in Jefferson County and was filled with over 140 people.
Good night.
Yeah. So they had to expand it, and they built a hospital onto it. Mm-hmm. At the time, they did not know it was an airborne disease. So even though they were quarantining these people, they didn't understand how it was passed between people. They just knew that they needed more room to contain it. So Waverly Hills became its own little town, complete with vegetable gardens, animals that they raised for slaughter, post office, water treatment facility, and even its own zip code. Patients, nurses, and doctors all had to say goodbye to their former lives and never leave the property. Ironically, though, they allowed visitors to come in who would visit with their family members and then go back to town.
And take the disease with them.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, did you not ever see the connection there?
Yeah. Oh.
In 1961, the tuberculosis vaccine was created, and the hospital eventually shut down as it was no longer needed. It was reopened in the next year, in 1962, as a geriatric facility, and then permanently closed in 1981. That is until 2001, when Charles and Tina Mattingly purchased it with the desire to restore it. They now make money. Go ahead. What?
I thought it was an insane asylum. No?
No, I'm not sure where sanatorium came. I think it was just sanitized.
Oh.
Not sanity.
Okay.
I don't know.
I love everybody who's really good at history right now is going to be like, those idiots.
I know.
It's not what it means at all.
History was never our strong suit.
Not
Okay.
even a little. Okay.
So they make money now to restore it by allowing ghost tours from March to August. In Halloween, it turns into a haunted house.
Of course.
Which it already is, naturally. And then Christmas laser shows at the end of the year.
Fun. That's sweet. I like it.
And it's reasonable prices, too. I kind of would do it. Oh. Groups of private investigators can pay to stay the night and encounter one of the most haunted locations in America for themselves. It's literally dubbed that. Paranormal activity spans from ghosts and doppelgangers.
Doppelgangers, fascinating. That should be something that we do as an episode.
I know. I agree. To demons, shadow beings, and then even a creature dubbed the Creeper.
Oh, I love it. I want to know more about
the
Creeper.
No, you don't. It's the worst. It's like the least common thing to be seen, but when you see it, run for your life.
Oh.
So while Waverly Hills had a lot of pleasant ways to treat tuberculosis, there were also a lot of painful experiments to try and help that usually ended up being fatal.
Okay.
So doctors would insert balloons into people's lungs and inflate them to help the damaged lungs open up so they could breathe. Mm-hmm. But it often caused a lot of pain, and then ultimately they died from it.
Okay.
So it's just
Good
like,
try. Good try.
Tap that down. Yeah. They tried to keep the news of deaths away from existing patients.
Yeah, keep the morale up.
Yeah, because they didn't want to lower their morale, because apparently, like, when you're sick and you give up mentally, you go faster.
Yes.
Physically.
Absolutely. Hope is a huge thing with illness.
Yeah.
For sure.
So they had a body tunnel called the body chute
that you can sleep next to.
Mm-hmm. Under the sanatorium that they hauled the dead through to a railway in the woods where they would load the dead onto a train and it would take them away.
What a shitty job.
Right? The whole thing was a shitty job because even if you were a nurse or doctor, you were bound to catch it at some point because it was airborne and they weren't protecting against that. Right. So you just go there to die, basically. So it's understandable why this place is extremely haunted.
Right.
Okay, so I think it's 5 floors.
Okay.
The 5th floor is like the most haunted, most dangerous floor and pretty notorious. Room 502 on the 5th floor is said to have a lot of activity. There were 2 nurse suicides that occurred in there. One was in 1928. A head nurse became pregnant from a doctor, and both she and the fetus contracted TB. And so she couldn't bear the thought of bringing the sick child into the world, so she performed an abortion on herself.
Gosh.
And then couldn't live with it and ended up hanging herself from the piping.
Wow. That's awful.
So sad. The other nurse jumped. Okay, so they had they would build like little window patios, kind of like terraces off of the floors so that the sick children could go out and get some sunshine out on these patios. So that nurse supposedly jumped from the window patio 4 years later, but they couldn't actually find a reason, and they wonder if she was pushed. Oh. Super dark. So there was a ghost encounter on the 5th floor, and I'm going to read it the way that they wrote it. They said, as a kid, I heard of some of the ghost stories, but took them as only stories. But I was very interested in getting a closer look at the place. This was in 1990. I was just a wee babe. Okay, this is I don't know if this is true, but if it is, just prior to this, a homeless man and his dog were sleeping in the building. 2 teenage boys who mingled in devil worship entered the building, attacked the man, and murdered him in the name of Satan, and then threw his body down the empty elevator chute. Jeez. At this time, there wasn't any security in sight. So I guess now maybe they have security on the premises? Oh, wouldn't that be a job? This person, their friends, they went out on that roof terrace that I was talking about, and they were just hanging out, thinking and talking about the stories they heard about the place when they began to see figures moving around in the dark inside the area of the 5th floor where the patients were bedded outside for air. Shadows everywhere. We began to see perfect formations of shadows of people that were not there. My friend Chris, who was supposed to be like tough guy Chris, lost his cool and suddenly wanted to bolt out of the place by jumping from the 5th floor roof. Sound familiar?
Oh, gosh.
I said, are you nuts? We got to go back out the way we came. So after building up the courage to face whatever it was in the halls and rooms on the 5th floor and exit, we had to enter it. Okay. We couldn't run due to the darkness and the mess the place was in. Apparently, it's like demolished inside, like really broken down.
And they still allow tours and all that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because I guess they're trying to fix up certain places of it, but they can't do it all at once.
Okay.
So we couldn't run. We held our arms tight and entered the hall area. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I had to see where I was going. Mostly I saw the shadows surrounding us, banging that seemed to come from everywhere, the ceiling, the floor, and the walls.
Ugh.
As we entered the stairwell, we somehow ended up on the floor below us and not the ground floor. As we entered the 4th floor, our eyes were more adjusted. The moonlight reflected through the building, and we had a pretty good sight of the hall up to the point where the hall bent in a slight angle. It had rained the night before, and due to the shape of the building and no windows left to block it out, the rain entered the building at will. On the floor were puddles of water, and we began to see bare footprints appearing out of the puddles as if someone had just walked through the puddle barefooted and left tracks.
That's so creepy.
The shadows were still surrounding us in the halls. The doors to the patient rooms began to slam shut. Chris, Mr. Tough Guy, began to cry.
Oh.
As I tried to calm him down, something crashed against the wall where we stood. When I looked to the floor, it was a brick. Something had just hurled a brick at us and hit the wall. Chris then began to run down the hall, and we just chased after him.
You know what it could have been?
What?
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Bigfoot they throw rocks.
At some point between Chris and us, behind Chris, but in front of us, 2 bright balls of light shot from one room across the hall and into the adjacent room. We ran past the area where the light traveled to get to Chris, who stopped at the end of the hall not knowing where to go. That's the worst. Like, I want to get out of here, but I don't know where the hell I'm going.
Exactly.
We calmed him a little bit, and it was as if someone just shut it all off like a light switch. There were no more shadows, no banging, and no flashing lights. So it sounds like they were almost feeding off of Chris's fear.
Yeah.
God, Chris, if you had just been a man. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
We're very PC on this, and we know that you don't always have to be a man, okay? You can cry and you
I
can
just
be
love
afraid.
that she kept prefacing, he's the tough guy in our group.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's the kitchen.
Okay.
Louisville's Ghost Hunter Society, a paranormal team, said that when they arrived, the kitchen was in absolute shambles. Tables were turned over, windows broken, and puddles of water were everywhere from a leaky room. The team didn't find anything useful. But as they turned to leave, they heard footsteps, a door slammed shut, and they smelled fresh baking bread.
Oh, well, that's
so pleasant.
That's nice. I like it.
The chef is like, these damn people didn't even leave me a tip.
Oh.
Okay, so then they were like, this one's super sad. And I guess there's 2 types of people in this world. The people that are sympathetic and the people that are like, oh, hell no, which is me. So there's supposedly an elderly woman who is bloody with chains in her hands and feet that roams the sanatorium moaning and crying for help. But when you approach her, she runs away screaming. So, so let's picture this for a moment.
I got it. Painting it in my head.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So you stumble down this hallway and you see, I'm guessing probably a naked elderly woman.
Yeah.
Bleeding, going, and then you offer to help her and she goes, like, do you feel sorry? No.
No. You know, it reminds me of when we went and saw Annabelle together this past week, and there was a preview of a naked crazy woman, and that's what I'm
that's exactly what I pictured.
Yes.
I was like, no, I don't feel sorry. I just want to like run.
No. It'd be one of those things where I'd be like, ooh, you know what? I'll call the police and let them check it out, but I'm out.
Yeah. Okay, so then there's a little boy named Timmy. Timmy was about 6 or...
That's my
little
name.
Boy, in parentheses, like in quotation marks.
Yeah.
We never know with these things.
Yeah.
He was about 6 or 7 when he passed away from tuberculosis. He cannot move on because he died so young, so people will bring balls and toys with them, and supposedly he plays with them, which I actually saw a video of it.
Oh.
And they put like one of those little, bouncy ball type things that they sell at the store. Yeah. They put a purple one, and they're like, Timmy, if you're here, you take a moment, gather your energy, and play with it. And it literally started like rolling this way and then this way. I mean, it wasn't like air pushed it.
Right.
It was like...
Legit,
okay.
Timmy was having some fun.
Yeah, Timmy was enjoying himself.
Okay.
All right. So then there's doppelgangers. Many tour guides claim to have seen themselves, sometimes even being identical, except for black holes where their eyes should be.
I hate that.
And we need to do an episode on doppelgangers because I read somewhere that if you see yourself, you die.
You die. Yep. I've
so,
heard that too. Ooh. That's so scary.
I know. I know. When I read that, I was like, I don't think I want to go here anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the final being, besides like the shadow beings that I already talked about, the creeper.
Yes. Oh, I'm excited about it. Okay. I love entities. I love like creatures. Okay.
Yeah, this is like a demon. Okay. It's a dark, terrifying entity that crawls along the floors, walls, and ceiling of Waverly Hills. When you encounter it, you feel sadness and doom.
Yeah.
And most tend to believe it is obviously demonic in nature.
Oh.
So that leads me to Richard B. Rollins' Shadow Eyes.
Okay.
Now
I'm intrigued.
I have to preface this, okay? I spent 2 hours because I Googled, like, okay, the creeper. I want some evidence here.
Yeah.
And this supposedly was the first time the creeper manifested. Yeah. Okay. And it was like all these resources. I was finding it multiple places on the internet. And there was this one website called WV Ghosts. So they're like specifically in West Virginia. And West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky are kind of all like squished together. Yeah. So this kind of took place over all 3 of those states. Okay. And they were like getting sent all of this information from all these different people, supposedly doctors, nurses, court systems, like really convincing stuff. Yeah. And then when they were trying to fact check.
Very reputable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When they were trying to fact check, like they did a full-on investigation, they were finding a lot of things that were coming up that made it look like it was an elaborate hoax. Okay. But it's not for certain because, like, I could see this actually happening, and I have no idea if it's entirely true, but it's also possible that all of this information was removed on purpose. Okay. And you'll see why. All right. So I'm going to tell the story with the disclaimer. Yeah. With a disclaimer that this may be an elaborate hoax. I mean, a hell of an elaborate hoax because I was blown away. Okay. So... And I also just want to see Rachel's face when I bring up one part of this. Okay.
Oh, it's about Bigfoot.
No. Oh. Okay. Okay. So Richard was born special and different.
Can we call him Dick?
I don't think I would do. After you find out what this kid is, you're going to be like, ooh. Okay. Okay. Sorry. He was born special and different, a clairsentient, empathetic from the start. The doctors that supposedly wrote this in describe his placenta as smelling like rose water when he was born.
What the fuck? That's disgusting.
I do have to say, when my son was born, he smelled like baby powder. And I was like, what is this? And the nurse was like, pheromones to make you love him. I'm like, what? Yeah. Did you not smell your kids?
I was so drugged. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I smelled... You can come smell my baby when I have it. Okay, I will. It smells like baby powder. Okay, so he was not born with dark newborn eyes, but fully developed green eyes like that of a 12-month-old. When you looked into his eyes, you just felt like he understood so much more. Okay. It's easy to see how this could be a story. I know, but just stick with me.
I'm on the ride. I'm ready.
Okay. So Richard's mother had walked through the Wright-Patterson Airfield and Space Museum in 1955. She was pretty much almost due. And there was apparently some kind of paranormal stuff occurring at this museum at the time. She fell ill upon walking through the Space Museum and was rushed to the hospital and gave birth to Richard. The baby immediately suffered light sensitivity. Like, you could tell the light hurt his eyes and he couldn't really be in it. So they actually covered his little thing that he was sleeping in like a dark cloth to protect him. Mm-hmm. His mother immediately rejected him. She refused to breastfeed or care for him and pushed him away from her next to the window. And that was pretty much the rest of his life in a nutshell. He was pushed aside from psychiatrists and his parents until at the age of 12, he was sent to Waverly Hills, which at that point was known as Woodhaven. It was the geriatric facility. But apparently it was also a place for conversion therapy. Oh. For trying to...
homosexuality?
Yeah. Okay. Break the gay out of homosexual boys.
That's so stupid.
Yeah. The boy...
And a geriatric place? What a weird tie.
I kind of wonder if that was a cover for what was actually going on. Okay. Because it was all an experiment at that time. Uh-huh. So this was 1967. Okay. The boy had apparently shown some sort of homosexual tendencies. I don't know how intense they were. Okay. But Dr. Bender was experimenting and had a program on conversion therapy that guaranteed to shock him back to his heterosexual state. Okay. Which I know that stuff has happened. Yes. So I was like, okay, I'm buying it. I believe it, you know? Mm-hmm. All of the boys she treated would eventually die of brain trauma, except for Richard. I think she treated like 5 boys.
How is this legal? It just blows my mind.
I don't even know.
Okay.
When Richard stepped out of the car, apparently, according to a bunch of sources, wildlife flocked around him, including hordes of crows.
He was
which
like
they were.
Cinderella.
Well, they were all like, "Oh, it's so cool," and I'm like, "Crows are usually not a good thing."
Remember Harold?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you said that, I was like,
Yeah.
Okay, so from the time he entered the facility, paranormal things occurred. He was bullied by the other patients, and those patients often went mad or died as a result. Orderlies he tried to escape at one point. He was only there for a week. Okay. So all this was like in a week.
Oh, yeah.
Orderlies tried to catch him after he tried to escape, and they did not fare well. One fell from the 5th floor.
That 5th floor.
I know. And ended up in a wheelchair, and the other died in a car wreck the next morning. Mm-hmm. Teens who attended the Jefferson High School in 1967 had heard of him because their family members worked at Woodhaven, and he was kind of like the talk of the town. Like, this boy was so strange. Like, he made kind of a fuss wherever he went. Mm-hmm. So the teens would sneak up to Waverly Hills late at night, and they would just watch orbs of light that would like collect around his window. Okay. And they would fly in and out of the room, and you could see it from like 1 a.m. to when the sun came up. Mm-hmm. And they would just disappear. Supposedly, ghosts left gifts at the foot of Richard's bed, and he even had an embroidered shirt with the name of like some little boy that had been given to him by a ghost, and he hid it in his pillowcase until he left because he didn't want them to take it from him. So it was only a week before he was ordered to leave the property. He also seemed to have a shocking connection to another supernatural being we have talked about.
Bigfoot.
On November 12th, 1967, a group of 5 people visited a cemetery in West Virginia. So this was after he left. Okay.
The Mothman? Uh-huh.
The cemetery where Richard's great-grandmother was buried. Surprisingly, he was sitting next to her grave marker when these people walked in. When suddenly, a man-like figure flew low from the woods over Richard's head and then over theirs. Everyone panicked and screamed except Richard, who stayed calm and remained. This figure was later dubbed Mothman.
Yup.
Supposedly, Richard even stopped his uncle from driving over the Silver Bridge on 12/15/1967, which connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, because he knew it was about to collapse, thanks to Mothman. And it was like one of those things, the story said that he got out of the car and he kind of cried for a minute, and he was like, "Don't go over that bridge, turn around, and don't go back."
Okay.
And 5 minutes later, it collapsed. He was later forced out of St. Albans, West Virginia, which was his hometown, because of his connection and the drawing of Mothman. Supposedly, after he left, Mothman left, and the activity ceased. So,
well, Mothman, as we know, is just a very misunderstood, sweet entity.
So when I read that part, I was like, okay, either Mothman's real or they're both fake. I couldn't quite determine, but I was like, okay, that's a wrench I did not see thrown into this.
Sure.
Okay, so originally where I even found any of this stuff was on paranormalencounters.com. Mm-hmm. And it was this letter that this guy named Harold Wood, who was supposedly like an orderly that was in the room when Richard was being treated by electroshock therapy, he witnessed the creeper like manifest for the first time. Okay?
Okay.
So this was his account of it. Basically what happens, and the reason he releases this, he's like a 96-year-old man, and there was a nurse in the room, Nurse Holland, who stole Richard's case file and held onto it, and before she died, she wanted to give him this case file because it also contained 2 pictures of the creeper that they were able to snap at the time.
Oh.
And she wanted him to have all that information because she felt guilty for everything that happened to him. Mm-hmm. So she wanted a clear conscience. And so did this guy. So that's why they were telling their story. So I'm like eating this up, right?
Yeah.
It's still believable. Okay. So his letter says, "I never believed in all that paranormal stuff. My wife and I are devout Christians, and we just do not believe in such things. However, I most certainly do now. The creeper is a real, tangible entity. A small group of us had the vision of this terrifying black image burned into our subconscious forever and evermore." A little poetic, but we'll go. "There's no erasing this event from our minds of what we witnessed inside the ECT treatment room that cool August morning back in 1967. Those of us who were non-believers soon became believers concerning the paranormal, and we would never be the same again. Most took this encounter to their graves. Keep in mind, we were, and even still are, afraid of that entity's long reach. All but one nurse who, without bad intent, let the cat out of the bag when her daughter made the fatal mistake of copying and posting the child's Woodhaven case file on Facebook for a friend to read, which I tried to find, and I don't know if I did, but I found something that was similar. It was a very private and personal file her mother had stolen and kept hidden for over 50 years. However, the story is out and there's no turning back. As of August 2015, I have been reading quite a few articles about the child Richard, alias Shadow Eyes, on the web. I expected ridicule, not support from everyone. Nevertheless, much to my surprise, many have shown support and have much fascination concerning the creeper. As an old man reaching 96, it's time I share what I know of that
96,
day.
good for him.
Yeah, back in 1967. So Richard arrives. I had been working part-time on the 4th floor as a nurse's aide and became good friends with Nurse Wilson and Nurse Holland during that time. I also knew Albert Bordenero, the director of Woodhaven, for a long while. I clearly remember the events in that room as if they happened yesterday. I will only address this one paranormal incident, for there were too many to cover, and I won't be discussing any abuse that took place upon the child that week. I had no hand in that back then, and I want no part of it now. Everything changed inside the entire sanatorium the very minute that the child Richard walked into the building. It was very perplexing, to say the least. We were put out by the amount of squawking crows that morning flying all around the child as he stepped out of the black Plymouth. Those crows numbered in the thousands and were flying, landing all over the Waverly. I met Richard in the office when they took his ID picture. Terror the child was feeling at the time was quite apparent to us all. For being such a little lad, he had a strong presence. He seemed to me much like a cherub, and I felt that he was what we called an old soul. Mm-hmm. He was a beautiful little boy, polite, always replying with yes sir or yes ma'am. He never said a word to the men unless asked a question. So that's what I kept getting from all these articles, was he did not like men. He was very against heterosexual men, particularly.
Okay.
He was very gentle and moved and walked about quietly, much like a cat. Eventually, he would also come to be known affectionately as Shadow Eyes. I'm going to show you. Let me pull up a picture of Richard Shadow Eyes real quick, and you will see why he was called Shadow Eyes, but I don't know that I would say it was affectionate. Rachel backs away slowly.
It's a cute kid.
Right? You just feel like his eyeballs are staring into your soul, don't you?
I really do.
Okay, so I remember the child made eye contact with all of us briefly. He avoided looking at the menfolk mostly. His glare, those penetrating green eyes, still resonate with me today. The child had a strong distrust of men. His eyes alone told the story. Richard was able to see right through us menfolk, read our minds like an open book. From then on, I stayed clear of his gaze, making sure to never have direct eye contact with him. But he was a cherub.
Yeah.
That's what, this whole story, I was like, you make him sound so nice, but...
contradictory, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so then the shock therapy happened. The first time I saw the smelly black entity known as the Creeper was on August 23rd, 1967 at around 10:30 a.m. Richard was wheeled into the room for his second electroshock therapy session and strapped down on the table. There were 2 doctors from outside the sanatorium whom I had never seen before, 1 male nurse and 1 male orderly, and then 1 female nurse. I overheard the doctors discussing upping the voltage on the ECT machine, way too much for a little child to endure. I feel that may have triggered the whole event. When they hit the on switch and the electricity hit the child, he let out a scream that was so loud and ear-piercing it gave me a headache. The child spit out his rubber mouth guard, and then things only worsened for him. Dr. Buckman slapped the child in the face and scolded him for spitting out his rubber guard onto the floor. When he slapped the boy in the face, the atmosphere changed quickly. The look in Richard's eyes was pure rage. I had never seen such a look from a child before. He was directing his gaze right at Dr. Buckman. His face turned blood red, sweat poured from the child, the veins in his neck and arms were pulsating. The child was strapped down and seemed so helpless now. It was making me sick to watch this abuse. I was about to leave the room when they hit the switch for a second time. The screaming only intensified, becoming louder and more violent. The child was screaming for his life, for his father, his mother, to God to help him get off that table and make it all stop. I looked over to Nurse Holland, who was beginning to cry and panic for the child's safety. At this point, Richard soiled his pants and urinated on the table, which apparently was extremely rare. Like, that shouldn't happen. If it does, it's way too high. Yeah. His eyes looked as though they were lit up, perhaps from the electricity. His eyes glowed and started to bleed from his eyes.
Oh, jeez.
He threw up, and white foam began to run out of his mouth. Unable to scream any longer, he passed out.
Gosh, that's awful.
It seemed to me the doctors were enjoying this, and I wanted to call the police.
You should have.
I know. One more time, Dr. Bender said.
Okay.
This was probably like why this is not recorded much, because it was a whole lot of illegal stuff, you know?
Yeah.
One more time, Dr. Bender said, not giving the child a moment to rest or clear out his mouth.
He was passed out.
Yeah. They hit the switch yet again, and something terrifying happened. The creeper appeared. The radiator in the treatment room began to clang and clang as though it was being struck with a hammer. Crows were flying into the windows as if they were trying to break the glass, then started piling up on the outside window ledge. The sounds from the radiator and crows became louder and louder. From the northeast corner of the ceiling, a black haze started dripping down to the ground. It was not actually touching the ground. Instead, it collected a few inches off the floor. The smell of burnt flesh, sulfur, and rotten eggs filled the room.
Cool.
This thing started growing in size, and within seconds, it was about 9 feet high, a solid black mist. It started taking on the shape of having only a head and shoulder area. Then it broke that form, floated with what looked like black and gray spider webs draping behind the mist as it moved over and shrouded the child like a big black blanket. We all heard the grumbling, a terrifying, very deep tone, a broken, static-like voice saying, "Get out! Get out! Go from the child! Leave him now!" Not one of us was able to move a muscle. We were unable to see the child through the black mist, but we were definitely seeing, smelling, and hearing this thing before us. I was thinking, what if that thing somehow consumes the child right before us? Talk about a lawsuit. I'm like, honey, you've already got a lawsuit.
Yeah.
The glass beakers began to fly off the shelves, crashing into the walls. Books, papers, anything not glued down began to fly around the room. Nurse Holland, the one who released the case files to him, was hit in the face with flying glass and fainted to the floor. We all took off running out of the room. Forget Miss Holland.
Yeah.
All of us, and I'm not proud of myself for leaving that woman on the floor. 2 of us went back within minutes with a gurney for Nurse Holland. Oh, they came back for her. Okay. I grabbed a camera and was able to take a snapshot of the entity now standing in the doorway to the room. The entity then vanished from the room faster than it had appeared. After tending to Nurse Holland, we all ended up in the chapel talking and trying to pull ourselves together. Nurse Holland was fine, just a few cuts and scrapes. This kid was still laying on the table.
Yeah, I was like, what about the kid?
She said to the doctors, I want to go get little Richard off the table, take him to his room, get him showered and cleaned up and tended to.
Yeah.
She was ordered by the doctor, you leave that freak right where he is.
Oh my gosh.
That was something that none of us in that room can ever really explain. Things worsened health-wise for some of us. A few died shortly after. Some quit and moved out of Kentucky altogether, heading in different directions with their lives. I hear that the picture I took of the entity after all these years ended up in the possession of the child Richard. He believes that the little child's pain and suffering that morning somehow brought about the manifestation of the entity that many now call the creeper in front of the 5 people inside the Woodhaven.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It was clear to all of us standing in that room that morning that the entity was without a doubt protecting Richard from his abusers.
Yeah.
So if a demon's protecting a child...
Yeah, that's what was confusing me, because I'm like, okay, sulfur, sure, yeah, okay, demon. But why is it protecting?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
To tell the truth, he was glad that the thing protected him. However, all involved paid dearly for their part in the torment, abuse, and sufferings they heaped upon the child. Now, we all know that negative energy can draw negative energy, so that part is so believable to me, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he and Nurse Holland went on to live long, full lives. And they feel that the only reason they did is because they were the only ones that were against the abuse.
Yeah.
So, I read the case files. I found out all the stuff about Richard. The wvghost.com had like all this stuff compiled. And then they had this thing at the bottom that says, read our investigation PDF. So I open it up and they're reading and they're like fact checking. And they started to say that like, apparently there was a Dr. Mason Perry or Perry Mason that sent any sort of talk of this stuff first.
Okay.
He doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
And then
Name could have been changed.
I know. And that's what I'm saying, because eventually this did go to the courts, supposedly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what if some of this was like expunged to protect this kid? Like apparently Richard changed his name later so that he couldn't be found. He's gone into hiding. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to be able to, so many people, paranormal investigators, even ghost inventor Zach Bagans has tried to reach out to this kid.
Yeah.
And
well,
he's a 60-year-old man now, but
yeah,
they can't reach him. They can't find him. He's just like disappeared. And only 2 people know where he is, and that is the owner of Waverly Hills, Tina Mattingly, and Nurse Holland knew, but she passed away. And then there was like one other nurse that knew about him and where he is.
Yeah.
So I found that letter that I just read you on paranormalencounters.com by Harold Wood. But then I found it on WV Ghost as told by Nurse Holland.
Oh.
The woman who stole the case file. So I'm like, okay, did somebody just get mixed up?
Yeah.
But then WV Ghost did a huge investigation and they determined that they believed the info was an elaborate falsification. I mean, it's really elaborate because there were all these different, they even had like this guy named Adam Hastings posted the story on like a blog post and people were like, hey, I was actually one of the nurses there. And like they were replying to this blog post with their own accounts and everything. So it was really weird.
Right.
The people
Somebody would have had a lot of free time to put all this together. Yes.
The people who sent in proof were found to be fake profiles or some sort of dead ends. They would lead to like LinkedIn pages that haven't been updated in a while. Papers that supposedly recorded. Okay. So there was like papers, like newspapers.
Okay.
That reported on this back in the 1960s. They went back and looked and they couldn't find records of it. Mm-hmm. Which to me, it's like, okay, you can remove records from being kept, you know? And then when I looked through the website's content, WV Ghost content, a Harold Wood sent them a letter talking about how he went to school with Richard.
Okay. Okay.
And so I was like, okay, did the names get mixed up?
Yeah. Was
it Nurse Holland or was Harold the 96-year-old man? Is this all fake? And I just found the nail in the coffin.
Right.
So who was he? We may never know if he existed or if the hoaxer, you know, if somebody got the name muddled up. It's just hard for me to know what the truth is.
Fascinating.
But I could believe that something like that would bring the creeper into being.
Sure.
And you wholeheartedly believe that Mothman exists.
I do. Trust me.
They even contacted the Mothman Society, like the people that put on Mothman Con. And they were like, have you heard of this? And they were like, no, we haven't heard of that. But it's just like, I don't know.
So if you see a very, very intriguing 60-year-old man with dashing green eyes, maybe stop him and ask.
Or run the other way. I'm not sure. But I just thought that was really, really interesting. And I was like all in until the investigation report. And then I was like, no, this can't be fake. Because it was so deep. There was so much to it.
Yeah, it's so frustrating when you spend so much time investigating something and then you come to like an end like that and you're like, no.
So I refuse to say that it's completely a hoax.
Sure. Believe what you want to believe, okay? It's a possibility.
Yeah,
it is.
And 45 minutes later, sorry.
It was fascinating, though. All right, my segment is on Bloods Point Road, which is in Cherry Valley, Illinois. This is my hometown haunt. When I think of hometown haunts, it's like something that when you're bored as a teenager on like a Friday, Saturday night, and you're like, what do we do now? I don't know. I don't want to go see a movie. Let's go check out this. Let's see if the stories are true. You know what I mean? Like,
I didn't have that. I was way too sheltered.
That's okay. But, you know, that Bloods Point 100% stands out as that to me. And I know so many people who have spent many a night there testing out the different legends. So, all right, little background. Bloods Point is the name of a very scary short road that's located between Fairdale and Pearl Road in Boone County, Illinois, USA. It's one of the top haunted roads in the world, harboring supernatural mystery combined with a bloody past. It's the site of many hauntings as well as many crimes, traces of murder, accidents, suicides, and yes, even witchcraft can still be felt in this eerie haunted road. I'm going to show Kaila a picture of the road here. So there's 3 different segments to Bloods Point. There is the road itself, there's the bridge, and there's the cemetery. Okay.
Oh, good.
So here is, let me see if I can find the road real quick. Again, as always, we will post these. So these are the train tracks along the road that are close to the road.
Okay.
Sign for Bloods Point. They even abbreviate it to BL Point.
Don't want to scare too many people off.
There's the road itself.
Okay. That looks like South Georgia.
Yeah, it's very flat. Again, well, it's Illinois. It's very flat. Here's the cemetery.
Yeah, that's a nope for me.
The gates to the cemetery.
Cool.
All right. So, perhaps the most well-known Bloods Point stories involved a bus filled with children returning from a party sometime in the 50s or 60s. The driver, dressed as a clown no less, swerved as they crossed the railroad bridge just west of Irene Road. The bus crashed. The bus crashed. I was like, did I just say bush? Bush, I did. The bus... Pull it together, Rich. Pull it together. The bus crashed onto the tracks below, and not a soul survived. Okay, so those are the tracks below the road that I showed you.
Okay.
Unless you count the disfigured clown occasionally spotted crawling across the pavement and the sound of giggling children.
Why was the bus driver just like a clown?
It was a party. I don't know.
Was it like a Halloween party? Like, I need more info.
I will say that I don't think that the facts have been corroborated with that. But so many people talk about it.
But somebody sees a disfigured clown and was like, oh, that's the bus driver.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So legend has it that if you put your car in neutral at the crash site, the kids will push you over the bridge. So
people test this?
Oh yeah, I've tested it.
Over the bridge. I was like thinking cliff for some reason. I'm like,
no. No. Nobody was going
You've
off the cliff.
tested this?
I have. I was with an ex-boyfriend and I've gone there, I think 3 or 4 times. Something really, really, really dark happened to me there. And honestly, I had blocked it out of my memory because I know that we've talked about our, personal experiences. And this would have been at the top of the list. I don't know why I didn't say it then. Honestly, it affected me so much that I think it was just like too much for me at the time. And as I was getting into this research, I was like, I kind of was brought back to that, and it was hard for me to handle. But anyway, okay.
So you have like ghost PTSD.
I guess so. So I don't think anything happened when we put our car in neutral there. I don't think it moved. But a lot of people, they'll put like flour or powder on their car, and then like they'll say that they see like little handprints as it's been pushed across,
No.
They're trying to help you. They're saving you. It's fine. Another legend involves patriarch Arthur Blood, who it's named after, who refused to allow his children to visit a local woman believed to be dabbling in witchcraft. None too pleased by this, the woman unleashed a winter from hell that killed livestock across the region. Massive prairie fires followed, along with disease. When Blood discovered that his kids were still visiting their friend, he hanged all 3 of them, you guessed it, from the old Bloods Point rail bridge.
That does not make sense at all.
Yes, he just went crazy. So the witch was eventually buried at the cemetery, where teenagers are long claimed to hear voices coming from a now destroyed storage shed. This is from ghostresearch.org, by the way.
Okay.
One of the legends handed down involves the decomposing and rancid-smelling witch Beulah, mentioned above.
Her name was Beulah?
Beulah. Don't mock her. Trust
I'm not trying to. I'm just like, what a name for a witch.
I'm just kidding. She's been seen walking late at night as if in search of someone or something, as witnessed when you dare to look into her demonic red eyes that openly penetrate the very thing that they are staring back at. It is rumored that by simply laying your eyes on her ominous being, you will feel the overpowering urge to run, but you will find yourself incapable of doing so, as an even stronger urge to vomit takes over even more. Bad luck often follows any living soul that is unfortunate enough to come in contact with this wretched woman, who now walks among the restless corpses forever, stuck in a dead man's hell.
So naturally, you sought this out.
Of course. Beulah's black cat has been known to run in front of vehicles, causing them to swerve to the side of the road, where you will most likely find the feline's owner walking along her path. So they kind of work together.
Poor black cats. They've got such a bad rap.
I do. Okay. Phantom vehicles from big rigs and old school buses to vintage pickup trucks are known to travel Bloods Point Road at all hours of the night, and a blaring red light from a ghost cop car has been seen by many unsuspecting travelers unfortunate enough to find them in the area where dead men walk. The railroad bridge is forever etched with memories of screaming children fighting for their lives after the school bus mysteriously crashed. The cries of help coming from the small passengers can still be heard on certain nights when the sound of no wind can be heard, but the distant anguish of suffering is the only sound that greets you. Mystery lights shine through the trees on Bloods Point Road, and the highest percentage of paranormal activity has involved the bridge. So again, the bridge. Apparitions of both children and adults have been seen, and barking hellhounds have been known to chase cars down the road.
Cool.
So, founded in 1836, the Bloods Point Cemetery unfortunately falls prey to ghost hunters and thrill seekers. But the fact is that vandals of the historical gravesite will meet a lifetime of bad luck, as disrespect to any of the markers of the many deceased residents of Boone County who lay beneath the tombstones, and other monuments will forever haunt their souls by communicating with those from the other side that have the power to invade the mind of the living who reek of evil thoughts.
So they call demons on them?
I guess so. Also,
nice.
Trespassers of the cemetery will be prosecuted and is under community watch 24 hours a day.
I think that's just every cemetery.
Hellhounds, again, have been spotted guarding the cemetery, and there have been several reports from visitors that the dogs do, in fact, attack, but they vanish after biting their victims, so catching them is virtually impossible. Paranormal investigators are drawn to Bloods Point Road due to the high activity of ghosts and spirits seen walking along the many stretches of roads. So I've been there many times. Okay. We're going to read a first-hand account from somebody I actually know and went to school with at Bloods Point Road. I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to get into my experiences.
Okay.
So let me pull up her story. Hello, ladies. This is from Sarah. Hello, ladies. I am here to share a story about the infamous, at least around our parts, Bloods Point Road, but more specifically, Bloods Point Cemetery. You can read more about the road and the cemetery in the link below. I'll provide that for you too. Now, on to the good stuff. I have visited Bloods Point Road and Cemetery several times over my high school days. It was always a fun and spooky, spontaneous outing my girlfriends and I took around fall. We would take video and pictures, but for me, nothing ever showed up. Once, when I was not with them, my friends swore they heard in the background of one of their videos, "Get out," in an angry, grisly voice. Oh, so they heard in the background, "Get out." But the tape had been unfortunately lost. Alas, a scary story without the evidence to prove it. That is, until now. She's a fantastic writer, by the way.
She is, yeah.
Very good.
I think I read this one.
Yeah. It was November 12th, 2006. An old high school friend and I were hanging out with two of my guy friends one evening, having a few drinks. The conversation turned to creepy stories, with Halloween having recently passed. Shannon and I were thrilled when we heard Justin and Ben had never been to, nor heard of, Bloods Point. The Rhoden Cemetery were rumored to be haunted. Just a side note, this was like 30 minutes from my house, so it was about a 30-minute drive from me and the people I went to school with.
Okay.
The road and the cemetery were rumored to be haunted, with trees turning into human figures along the ditches, hellhounds and ghostly dogs guarding the cemetery, and little dead children pushing your car over the bridge. Shannon was part of the old gang who used to frequent Bloods Point with me in my high school days. Giddy with spooky excitement, we immediately coaxed two of them into Shannon's car to head out and give them a good scare. Mind you, Shannon had not been drinking, so she drove. We decided to hit the cemetery first. Armed with my digital camera and clinging to Ben, I entered over the fallen gate. Justin must have been too drunk to be scared because he frolicked around without a care. He even adorned a pair of cat ears from my Halloween costume left in Shannon's car.
Important detail.
Yes. Shannon, on the other hand, decided to stay in the car. She was one of the gals who had experienced the Get Out night and hadn't been as eager to explore since. I get that. While I have been several times, I was always freaked out of my mind. Despite loving the experience, the visits never lessened my fear. We slowly made our way around the cemetery, which is pretty small, very old, and very creepy, especially without flashlights or streetlights to guide us. The moonlight offered our only source of light and the occasional flash from my digital camera. After a while, Justin noticed the shed. Everyone who had been to the cemetery knows the old shed, but I had yet to hear of anyone going in.
Was this the shed that got torn down later?
I guess so.
Because you said there were like disembodied voices that came from it, and then it got torn down.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Justin's liquid courage and my resistance to being left alone found us inside. I mean, the two boys were going in with or without me, and I sure as hell was not going to stand out there in the cemetery by myself.
Right. You got those hellhounds to worry about.
I made myself as scarce as possible, burrowing into Ben's chest. Justin insisted I take pictures, which I reluctantly obliged. It was a small cement brick building, bare and doorless. There were several high windows, but the panes of glass were long gone. One window had a tree branch crawling through it, and there were bits of trash scattered about and a few marks of graffiti on the concrete walls. Though beyond creepy looking, we experienced nothing extraordinary. I just remember being very, very scared and feeling as if I should not be in there. Eventually, after Justin had his fill, we exited the shed to head back through the cemetery into the car. I felt an urge to take a few more pictures, turned around, and snapped a few just outside of the shed. Once in the car, I flipped through all the pictures, viewing them on the small camera's display. Nothing exciting, but still a fun and spooky night, I thought to myself. Fast forward to a few nights later, when I uploaded the pictures to my computer. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, at first. Too many cat-eared blurs of Justin laying on the grass, running around, grinning like the Cheshire Cat in a dilapidated shed. A capture of one of the windows with the tree branch hanging through it, me clinging to Ben, and a few before and after shots of us singing and goofing off in the car. As I sat there in the dark of my apartment, eyes glued to the screen, I revisited the picture of the shed. The first from far away, the second closer up. You could see the window with the branch through the doorway. You could see the glassless window easily. Then I saw them, 2 red dots, burning, shining brightly right in the middle of the window. My heart began to pound. No way. Must be a reflection. But there's no glass in the window, right? I flipped to the shot of the same window from inside the shed. Yep, no glass and no red dots.
And a tree branch going right through it.
Yep. The first picture, no red dots. The second, red dots. I zoomed in and out, looking for any other flickers of the same color. I stared at them, zoomed in on my screen. What were they? My mind instantly knew. They were spaced evenly apart, like eyes, like the red eyes of a hellhound. Good luck sleeping. So she provided pictures.
She sent us the picture.
Yes. Okay, so there's the entrance.
That's creepy.
There is some of the graves.
Cool.
Oh. So there's the window from the inside.
Yeah. And you can see the tree branch going right through it. We'll upload this to the Good Luck Sleeping podcast.
Window from the outside. No red dots. And dun, da, da, da. Holy cow, that's so scary.
I hate it.
Red eyes.
Oh, and the bar goes right between them too.
Yep. Girl.
Sarah, you were being watched.
So we'll show those to you.
It literally looks like when you catch your cat unawares and its eyes are like in the camera. It's like that, but red.
Okay, there are lights. I was like, there's a whole bunch of lights in like the cemetery part that she took with the tombstones, but I was like, are those orbs? But
yeah,
it looks like there's lights at the entrance, so that's what.
Look, I can handle orbs.
Yes,
but eyeballs, no, thank you.
Right. I'm really glad she had a minute to take a closer look at those.
I will confess, I went through and I was like zooming in on all the parts of the photos, trying to see if there was anything else that she may have missed. Oh. All right, I want to hear your experience. What did you block out?
Okay, well, a few lighter ones. Okay. So I went up there with my husband and some friends just one night. We're like, let's go to Blood's Point. So we went driving around and we turned on to Blood's Point, and there's like there's a few sparse farmhouses, like they're kind of older, that are just hanging out on the road. And there's a man, I'm not joking, standing right by the road with a shotgun. Okay. So
real or ghost?
I'm pretty sure he was real.
Okay.
So paranormal, no. Creepy,
yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Another one that was paranormal was so you remember I was saying like there's the cars that haunt the road and they kind of follow you closely. So I was with a bunch of friends and there was no room for me in the car, like, so I was in the very back.
Oh, okay. That's the worst.
Then I was very small, so they just put you in the way back. You can fit in the way back. Better than sitting on someone's lap in the back seat. So I was in the way back, I think alone, because there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I was a little bit in the back. And we turned onto Bloods Point Road. There was nobody. Again, Illinois is very, very flat, so you can see cars on the roads around you.
For a long way.
So dark, so you would be able to see spotlights, especially way out there, you know, or headlights. We turned onto Bloods Point Road, and there was a car that followed us right to our butt. Okay, so I'm looking out the back window. There's a car right there following us super closely.
I would have been in the front seat by the end of that.
I ducked down. I remember ducking all the way down, and then we turned off the road and it disappeared, like vanished. Okay. So that's
so scary. Oh my gosh.
So this story, okay. It's a lot. So I was with my friend Danielle and Brittany.
Okay.
And they were friends from high school. And so Danielle was driving and we're like, let's go to Bloods Point. It's what you do. I was in the passenger seat and Brittany was behind Danielle. Okay. So we're driving along the road and we see an old lady walking along the side of the road. Okay. White hair, very old. And
drive faster.
well, at that point, Danielle was super compassionate, and I
you did not stop.
Girl. Okay. So she's like, I think we need to help her. And I was like,
do you know where we are?
And Brittany was just in the back like, F no, absolutely not. And she's like, no, it's very rare that you see an old lady in the middle of the road.
Yes, it is weird, isn't it?
In the middle of the night, pitch black, no stoplights around, or no street lights around. We need to help her. And so we pulled up, right alongside of her.
How was she dressed? I'm just curious. Did it fit the time?
It was raggedy, very raggedy clothes. Okay. So almost like she was maybe homeless. Okay. So we pulled up next to her. She's walking just slow, steady pace along the road. Pulled up next to her and she rolls my window down. Okay. Because that's how we're talking to her. And, Danielle looks over and she's like, ma'am, do you need some help? Do you need help? And she turned to us. Her eyes were the iciest blue eyes I had ever seen. Okay. And said no word, but opened the door.
No.
Next to Brittany and got in the car. Okay. And so she's right behind me and I see Brittany. She's like all the way as far over as she could possibly get. Okay. And so we shut the door and we start driving down the road. And Daniel's like, ma'am, do you live around here? Like, is there someplace that we can take you? And I was like, yeah, is that your house? Like pointing to the next closest house. She says nothing. All of a sudden, she looks at Danielle and says, Danielle.
What?
She knew her name.
If this were a video, I would pause it right now.
She goes, Danielle, you're going to lose the ability to walk.
Oh my God, what?
Said nothing else after that. She turns, I got like goosebumps.
I've got goosebumps.
She turns to Brittany. Brittany, you're going to lose a family member.
Rachel bolts out of the car.
There's going to be a fire. Okay.
She's like cursing y'all.
So what happened later on in life? Okay, this was back in...
She didn't curse you?
No, I'll get to it.
Oh, God.
So what happened? So Danielle was a gymnast. Okay. She was doing a back handspring, and she fell on top, it was on the mat, but off the mat, enough that it was on the hard part of the floor that she hurt her back so much that she did lose the ability to walk for a long time. She was in a wheelchair. They ended up having to do physical therapy.
So the lady conveniently left out, you'll get it back.
Right.
Just wanted to be like, yeah, you're screwed.
Brittany, her house caught on fire and she lost her little sister. Her little sister didn't make it out. Okay, that was I think
how did you
2 years
forget
later.
this crap?
I told you I blocked it out. It's intense.
What did she say to you?
She said, Rachel, I was the last one. She goes,
you're not going to pull my leg and say this is a joke at the end, are you?
She goes, you're going to be in a car accident and it's not going to be good. I have not been in a car accident yet.
Oh, dadgummit.
So every time I'm in a car now, it's something that I think about because the two things
That's why you drive like a grandma.
I'm very, very careful in the car. Then out of nowhere, we were driving along and we're like, is this your house? Is this your house? She takes, she had these long creepy fingernails and she goes whap into the back of my neck while we're driving. It hurt so bad and I started bleeding. So I'm holding my hand and we're like, you have to get out of the car. Get out of the car. Okay. And so we got her out of the car. I'm holding my neck and I'm bleeding and we just left her. We're we just left her because we were just
shouldn't have let her in the first place.
Then let me show you. Hold on.
You do not have a scar.
To this day, I have a scar.
Rachel!
stay close by so they can hear you.
If this is a joke, stop. This was a joke. This whole thing was a joke. I hate you so much.
You didn't get scared enough.
Because I'm sitting there going, there's no way this happened and you forgot.
Remember when I said in the beginning, would you still be my friend no matter what at the end of this episode?
I caught on though.
Dang it, Kaila.
I'm too smart.
My husband told me that story as we were driving later at night one time, and I ate up every single word, as I always do because I believe everything. And he did that to me. I literally peed my pants.
Okay, well, since we're sharing things, I actually this past week captured a picture of Bigfoot when I was up in the North Georgia mountains. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm. It's Dick Pirate.
No, that's not. Oh. That's Todd.
Oh, it's so funny.
He is so hairy. I want you. I'm just gonna look at those shoulders.
Holy cow! Wow, when you get to the close up, it's really
that was his pose for Bigfoot. He let me take that picture and was like,
oh,
he knows it. He knows it. I was like, so Todd, were you just born hairy? Like,
that's too
or
great.
did you just have like this 1 year of puberty where you're just like? I'm actually really relieved that's not real.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Ryan today, and I was like, "Hey, remember that story that you told me way back when about when we like finished at Bloods Point Road, and, like driving around?" He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Do you think I can tell it to Kaila because she's pregnant, and I don't want to scare her too bad?" And he's like, "Do it, do
pregnant but skeptical."
Yes. He's like, "Absolutely," and I was like, "Okay."
That's great. I was like, "There's no way you would just forget this. There's no way."
And then I was like, that's why we had to pause in between the stories so I could write it down so I could get my lies straight.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know. Like, I'm not even friends with Danielle or Brittany.
Well, I was kind of wondering, okay, if Ryan told that story, did he say Danielle and Brittany? Who did he use?
Some it was like mutual
dudes'
friends.
names?
Yeah,
Yeah,
mutual
okay.
friends. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, guys. Well,
this was a test of our friendship.
it was, and I think we're gonna be okay.
Yeah. Turns out I'm not gullible. So.
I would have lost my mind had the roles been reversed.
You were just hoping I was going to scream and pee my pants a little.
I was. Yeah. But the baby would be okay. That's my,
yes.
my ultimate hope. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, tuck yourselves into bed. Get your favorite stuffed animal.
Rest assured that nothing actually ever happened to Rachel.
Yeah. Well, the car thing did. And the shotgun thing did, but that's it.
Yeah.
Good luck sleeping, guys.
Good luck sleeping.